welcome. This is our continuation on our last video on reinventing Africa. So today we will start with education for the future. So, when we in our previous video we talked about reinventing Africa, things we need to do, talk about the mind, how to reshape the mind, how to how we can redesign the mind. Before we talk about leadership. Okay. And part of the things we talked about when we talk about the mind is kind of re-educating ourselves, trying to face out some of those things that might been in place for a long time but no longer useful or no longer that important in giving us the Africa that we want. So today, part of that continuation, we are looking at education for the future. So we're not just looking at education for now. What is the current system? So we're thinking of education. Can we project the future and bring in education in it? So one of the things we'll look at there is problem solving. So it's one thing for someone to be educated. It's one thing for someone to learn something, but another thing is teaching the student to 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 learn in a way that they can be able to solve problems. So we should teach students to ask questions. One of the ways people can learn in a way they can become problem solvers is ability to ask questions. Okay, so it's not just trying to learn or trying to take what the teacher is saying. Okay, that's all. As long as it's coming from the teacher, so we have to ask questions on the things we're being taught because it's through question asking that we can learn. So uh, we have to teach students to develop the ability of asking questions and not just questions, better questions, uh, which will help them to design real solutions. Okay. Also, we talk about educating uh, the future generation or educating Africans, more especially the future generations, the current and the future, not just the future generation, the current and the future generation of Africans to become entrepreneurs, normalize building and creating, not just just start seeking employment. Just we should usually learn to create, we build. Okay, everything we are using when we look around us, most of them are product of innovations and entrepreneurship. So we have to develop that mindset. Our education system has to do that. Like I said in the last video, we're not just thinking about or talking about the education system. Uh, it's a system that is being controlled by some people, and uh, as long as it favors some very few, there is no need for any change. So, if we are talking about education, then we're talking about going the extra work, doing the extra work, just like what I'm doing now. Okay. Imagine if I have people around me, maybe we are staying in the same place or in the same location. Definitely, I should be able to pass across some of this knowledge to them and not just them learning it and equally pass it across to them in a way that they can develop that African mindset. How can I become an entrepreneur to grow Africa? How can I become a problem? How can I learn as a problem solver in a way to promote Africa? So uh it's not just relying on uh the leaders like our so-called political leaders that we have out there. Then we'll talk about digital skills, okay? Although most parents now are doing a whole lot when it comes to digital skill, coding, data, okay, digital literacy. So because people are now trying to do the extra work, although some schools try to invent that as well. Yeah. Uh, we this side, parents are doing a lot to live already, and some schools are institutions are for the trying. Okay, so most parents understand what it is to have digital skills, and some of them are doing the extra work. They have to create kind of extra activities for their children in order for them to be able to develop some of these skills. Okay, we'll look at civic responsibility. Education must cultivate citizens, not just workers. So uh, that comes to what I talked about in my last video about patriotism. Okay, how can education be able to promote real citizens, okay, not just workers, because when you start talking about real citizens, you're not just thinking about how paycheck. You're just equally thinking about building, okay. Okay, I'm in this position, I'm in this particular place. I know I'm not going to be here forever, but how can I uh, lay the foundation? How can I build that at least when someone that is coming to take over, you is going to see, hey, a lot has been done, and the person that's coming to take over as well should be able to put in make another impact. Okay, so it's not about making impact. Just like another way we can look at it is making impact as citizens and not just workers. So now we come to parents as architects of African pride. This is one of the most important aspect of this our class or whatever this our section. Okay, uh, I parents we have a whole lot of work to do. Although that we still have the society aspects, which most of the things that happen somehow is being influenced by the society, but it all starts from home. Okay, and most of us is most of the current grown up or even the parents today, um, their learning starts from home. It was the type of lesson or the type of upgrading that was given to us that we have that was given to us growing, not just us like growing up. There's this kind of when we were small, there's this kind of teachings that was given to us. Let me give example. Okay, one of the reason why religion is doing so well today is if we look at our homes, just like this drawing, this book. Okay, there's this book most people have at home. They call it my book of Bible stories. So there is this extra work that our parents do for us to make sure that we are equipped religiously. Okay, um, they get us religious books. There is religious books for kids. Some people have my book of Bible studies. Some people have different Esther. You understand? So as a child, you're already thinking about Esther. You're already thinking about uh, David, like all those stories. So your head is filled up about all these guys. So, and if you look at those stories, uh, it it can only the most of the work those books does is to enable you to grow up to become like a pastor. Okay, and this is why we have so many pastors today in Africa, because parents laid a foundation that produced that. Okay, most people that had those upbringing where we have so many religious books in our home. So most of those people are most of them you see to them they are today pastors, and most of them are building churches. So uh, the true education starts from home. So if we parents, if we can understand this, how do we educate our children to understand Africa, to have that African mindset in them? How can we do that? So we have to cultivate that. We can even do a lot of work by letting them out, teaching them, just like we were growing up. Most of us that are from Christian homes, they taught us about David. They taught us about some of these young people. How David, you understand? How David killed Goliath. So some people even named, giving that name. So you grew up thinking you want to be like David. Okay. So Esther's, you grew up thinking I want to be like Esther. So there are African leaders, past leaders who have done so great. You can even teach your children about Thomas Sankara. Okay, these people that have done so well. Okay, why was the system against them? Because they did it. So a child who learn about Thomas Sankara, or even some of this current president that is doing so well, like Ibrahim Traore, okay, he is no longer thinking like if you study the Bible, the settings you imagine your settings about heaven. So you think more about heaven, okay, you dream about heaven. But when you study some of these great men that are doing so well, you think more about Africa, because when you think about Thomas Sankara, you're thinking about Africa. You're not thinking there's a place you're going to go after when you die, and you have to do something so that you can go there. So imagine as a child you study about Thomas Sankara, okay, Patrice Lumumba, all those men, even that have done so well, it shapes your mind. It shapes your mind as a kid, and you want to grow up to do what those people have done, and you have to even fight because once I believe that why we have Ibrahim Traore today is because he learned about Sankara. Okay, he learned about that great leader. Had it been there was no uh, teaching or whatever or lesson about that history that happened, that guy wouldn't have done a lot. Okay, so most children today don't even know about their history, about most of these great men that have done well. Okay, so how do we want a better future if we don't start building those things inside them? So this is one of the most important aspects. I even believe that if I even have enough, this is where I'm going to put most of my work about education. Okay, we can lay the foundation of the African we want, the future African that we want today. It's not going to happen tomorrow. So one of the ways we can lay that future African, the future great Africa, not just any African, that future great African that we want, is to start laying the foundation of education. Children should know about Ibrahim Traore. Children should know about Thomas Sankara. Children should know about some of these guys that have done well. Even this Whitney Rodney, the guy that did How Europe, that wrote How Europe on the developed Africa. Some of those books should be should we should have a kind of books for children that will cultivate, that will promote that African patriotism. So people will grow up thinking of African. How can they make African better? People that have churches today, they grew up thinking how they can have churches, and they have the churches because the materials they have around them focuses on church, heaven, and all those things. So they want to take so many people to heaven. So if we have materials for kid that focuses on making African better, then definitely we're going to have a future generation that thinks more about making African better. So why we are having all these churches everywhere is because there was a material years back that built those things, that laid those foundations. So people we started thinking about heaven. Even as kids, there's so many stories about heaven. So you think about heaven. So when you grow up, you have to have an environment that will take people to heaven. And that's why we're having all this. And so if we can use the same approach and and present African to this future generation as a responsibility to them, then we have started working on that future great Africa that we need. Okay, so we have to teach them through history. Okay, have to teach them very rich history. Okay, let them understand everything. Foster identity. We have to probably discuss challenges and hope. Okay, these are some of the challenges we had, and this is the hope. We have to highlight innovations to them, how some of our innovative ideas, how we can even make those things better. Uh, we have to shape future leaders, just like what I've said before now. Okay, so the change cannot wait for permission. This is another very important aspect. I've already said some of it. Okay, change cannot wait for permission. A lot of people have done so many works regarding to how African can become better years even before I was born. So a lot of work has been done. A lot of books have been written. Okay, so why are we not having change? Because most of these things we focus more on how what leaders should do, what leaders should be do. We should have good education system. We should have a a system that is no corrupt, a leadership system that does not have corruption. So all these things, most of these things has been done. But the question, why do we still, just as if we are revolving around the circle? Okay, the simple truth is this: the people that we're waiting to implement some of these things that have been written over time, they are not gonna do it. Okay, when you study even human relationship and politics, that's what we call it's a game. They call it a game of interest. So how can you uh focus on what is what how focusing on African is going to benefit you as a politician? So if you notice, there's no benefit, and these guys are thinking about the few years they have in seat, how what are going to benefit from it. So there's no benefit in this. In fact, this is going to cause trouble for them. Okay, Ibrahim Traore that is doing well is facing trouble. Why? Where is the trouble coming from? Are external factors. So there is always external pressure. And how can they deal with all this pressure? So most of them will just have to, let me just play the game normal, okay, so that is the external factors will not going to come after me. So all these all these reasons, and also some of them, they have reason that they were not going to make money. How are they going to make money and have their houses, okay, own all the whole money they want to own, both in their countries and abroad. So how can they, so this making African better, trying to will not benefit them. Okay, so they're not going to siphon all the whole money, making African better. So, and this is the problem, because all the works that we have been doing all these times are all about what we're going Africans is going to do, what African leaders are going to do. It focuses of African leaders unite, 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 unite. Man, it's not going to happen. Okay, it's not going to happen with this kind of leaders that we have. It's not going to happen unless that there is a way that are being forced. Okay, but if it is based on for them to volunteer or voluntarily do all these things, it's not going to happen, because like I said, there is no way. Like, they're going to look at what is the interest, how this is going to benefit me. Some people even say, what is the return on the investment? So yeah. So how are we going to do now? That is why I have this section. I call it the change cannot wait for permission. Change cannot wait for permission. So how are we going to go about all these things? How can we reinvent Africa? And how can we have the African that we want? Number one is through direct action. Okay, so we have to bypass the corrupt system through volunteer. We have to volunteer ourselves. Now, me, I grew up a Christian. I grew up as a Christian. Okay, as a Christian, there is so many things we did. We even did religious studies in school, and this religious studies does not do I'm not even sure it reach up to 5% or even 1%. Okay, enough to create all these pastors that we have today. Okay, and these pastors that we have today did not become pastor through the religious study we did in school. So the the system or religion does not wait for government to come in and start churches. They didn't wait for government to start churches, to build these churches. No, people went in. People did the extra work. There was volunteers. People contributed their resources, their money. So for us to have the Africans that we have tomorrow, that for us to start building the Africans that we want tomorrow, is going to cost us. This is one of the ways we're going to do it. There's going to be direct action. We have to leave these corrupt politicians and go ourselves and do it. You have to volunteer. It's going to cost us a lot. It's going to cost us a lot of effort, and it's going to cost us money. So we have to, if we have to bring out our effort, we're going to bring out our money. Some people can start by creating, just like now. I give instance now. When we have a Christian, there's so many Christianity books. So most of these books focusing on making you a better Christian. So we can create those books. We can have books for kids. We can even have seminars. We can have quiz. Like, you can create so many programs that will help install Africa, that will help promote how people can become, just like we Christians read books that will make them a better Christian. Can equally create books that will make people a better African. To be honest, most Africans understand their religion far more than they understand Africa. They can write pages of books about their religion, pages of books, chapters, but very few when it comes to Africa. Okay, so and which is which is and we which is a result of the works that have been done over time by some of the volunteers that came to Africa. So we have to learn from them and go direct. There should be direct action. We have to bypass these leaders. Number two, we have to build local solutions. Okay, community led. Just like I said, religion, they have local bodies, or they created local solutions that's going to touch. So some of those remote areas, how can somebody in those remote areas know about Africa? One thing we should know is this: the future generation, the future leaders are not going to come from the people, the future politicians of Africa are not going to come from heaven. They're still going to come from the streets. They're still going to come. Some of them are even yet to be born. So for for us to have someone that will disobey the system tomorrow and choose to do the right thing, it starts by us educating them today, teaching them about Africa, giving them example, creating books about some of these great men that African has had, why they died. There's a lot of Christians that will be ready to die today because of Christianity, because they've learnt about some of these disciples and apostles, how they died. So there's so many people today that are ready to give up their life for Christianity. The question: how many person is ready to give up their life for Africa? Very few. So if Christianity can be able to raise people that are willing to give their life for Christianity, we also can be able to raise a generation that will be willing to give their life for Africa. That's the way. How did they do it? Through education and building systems and building connections. They make sure that parents understand it very well. That's why parents, as growing up, say parents made you to. Our parents build the whole things. They made us to see church as something to worship. Like you have to be very very careful. There is hell. There's this fear. Okay, that people when you talk about heaven and hell and all those things. So had it been we were born other place, okay, maybe in Asia or wherever, we might be Muslims. Okay, so if Christianity that was not there before so many years ago wasn't there, okay, yeah, and today people are ready to die for Christianity, how much more Africa, our continent, our home, the only home that we have. So we have to learn from Christianity for some of these religions. How did they be able? How were they able to raise people that are willing to die for them, and equally raise a generation that be willing to put in all their best for Africa? The same way we have people that are bringing out their resources, money, whatever, in order to help build Christianity. We should build up. We ourselves should be able to bring out our money, our resources in order to build the African that we want. Because number one is Christianity takes you to heaven. Everything you do, you're going to heaven. But when you build African, it creates the future dream African that we want, that is going to make African a better place. At the end of the day, we should be able to build Africa where any person can become rich, but nobody should be poor. Why? Is because African is the only continent that has all that it needs. That a continent needs to survive. African is the only continent that has. So it's much easier for African to build a continent where nobody becomes poor, but any person can become rich. It's more compared to other continents because they are dependency. African is the only continent that even if they decide to cut us off, do any people that is deciding to cut African off will be the people to suffer, not African, because we have everything that we need. So we need to we need to learn and change. Okay, the systems that are existing, the system that we have currently is not going to help us. Okay, we have to take a direct action. Okay, we want to. For me now, my if I have children tomorrow, okay, my children definitely going to know more about Africa. I'm going to invest time to teach them about Africa. And when they're growing up, once as they're growing, they already know. They have to know about some of these great men. I didn't know these things. I even I know little or know nothing about Africa during my school and university days. Okay, it's my quest. I started asking questions. Why are we like this? What is the problem? What are those things these people have that we didn't have? It's through asking questions I started understanding. Oh, there is a setup, there is a design that has been in place, and how can we change this thing? I probably study some of the works that have been done, and I noticed that even people, our brothers and sisters who are in power, won't even allow the current state of things to change. So I said we need to come in. Okay, we need to come in and change this. And one of the ways we're going to do is for us to volunteer. Okay, volunteer ourselves and do all these things. So we have to talk about parallel systems. Okay, develop alternative, okay, that works independent of government uh, inefficiencies, just like what I've said. So we have to have alternative systems. So whether government are ready to reform the school, to change the curriculum or whatever, we have to have a system that works, irrespective of what the government is doing about education. Citizen responsibility. Young people, okay, young people and citizens step up, owning their futures. So just like we citizens, everybody we come to that point where everybody we need to own our future. We need to stand up, not just even stepping on. We need to stand up and say, "Hey, we have to own our future."